how do we get to this point?
So I can start that because I think it was my fault that we got here, right?
I think it might.
Sort
If you
of.
want to if you want to start the blame game, yeah.
Yeah, well, I like taking blame. It's my operating model. I never place blame, really and truly. How do we get started with this? It was a fun thing, actually, right? There was a Twitter thread that was tell us 5 things you did. I think it was something like this. You probably remember better than me, Jess. It was tell us 5 things you did before you became what you are today.
Yeah.
It was something like that,
it was
right?
like five past jobs and then tag 5 people. So it kind of
That's what it
created
was.
wildfire pretty quickly because so many people were getting tagged and involved.
Yes, and I think I read C. Wright's response to that, where he was a singing waiter, and I was like, I responded to it, and I know it got some feedback because I was an auto mechanic and I drove an auto parts truck, and flunked out of college 3 times, and people were like, "What?"
You're a successful financial advisor today.
Notting went broke flipping houses, and I think I DM'd you and said, "Hey, we should do this.
We should do a podcast."
And you thought I was saying, I want to come on, Mark wants to come on Jess's podcast and do this. I was like, no. We should do a podcast.
Yeah, because I for a while had a series called The Breakthrough Factor. And the premise of that series was, what does it take to break through life plateaus or career plateaus or tough moments in life? And so some of these things that were coming out of those conversations related back to that very topic of how do we move forward out of failure and past and through some difficult times in life. And so I thought when you sent that to me, you were talking about, this has really stirred up some ideas that I have about my breakthroughs, and let's go on and record a session. And I was like, sure, let's do it, Mark. So we scheduled some Calendly and jumped on the phone. And I'm like, okay, so you want to record a podcast? And you're like, yeah, I want to do a podcast. What are we going to call it? Total left ball. I love it. It was perfect.
It's funny how you think you're talking about the same thing and you're not.
Right.
You, I think, probably know me fairly well. I'm a lot of things, but I'm not a self-promoter. I would never suggest to anyone that I be on their podcast. I mean, I've done a couple, but because I was asked.
Okay, but you're good at it. So, and I don't know, in the podcast world, people say that all the time. We should do a podcast together. You have a podcast. So I didn't think anything badly about it. I just didn't think anything differently about it. I didn't think about this being, maybe a whole new endeavor. So that kind of propelled the idea of, what if we did do this podcast? And what if we did interview these people? And what if we did put their stories out into the world and let people see that it's not just a straight line journey into financial services or into a wonderful career, even if you're not in financial services. There's a lot of ups and downs and jagged points and drop offs, and you feel like you fell off a cliff. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in a brand new, wonderful place. And so it's been really fun and cool already just to hear from really wonderful, what I believe to be successful people. I think objectively they are wonderful. I believe they are successful, and it's been really neat to hear their stories and to hear just the path that got them to where they are. And I'm looking forward to sharing that so that others can be inspired.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing about the people who responded to that tweet and got in that chain is, I mean, a number of them. I know some of them directly, some tangentially, but in every case, everybody we've talked to, and I think everybody who we have on the list to talk to, is just first and foremost a decent human being.
Yeah.
And as it so happens, I'll just take Christine for an example, who's been at Morningstar her entire career and is like, there's nothing interesting about what my career looks like. Oh no, you are so wrong.
Sorry, Christine, you're wrong.
That's just the way it's worked out. And maybe it's just because decent human beings attract. I mean, the only thing I will promote about myself is I think I'm a decent human being. I think you're a decent human being.
Thank you.
And I've found, at least on Twitter, that they attract decent human beings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We have a couple of what I would call very good friends. You're one of them. Portnoy, Brian Portnoy, Ryan Kruger, Courtney Randstrom, who I would consider, to be real friends, made through Twitter. Mm-hmm. They're by far the best friends I've had in my lifetime.
That's amazing.
Bizarrely done remotely, not the way that people make friends, but
that's right. That's so funny. Adjacent story to that is, we're going to go completely off topic for a second, but my 16-year-old has a boyfriend that lives in Utah. And so I hesitate spilling this information in public. Her and my husband had just gone to visit him out in Utah. And, everybody's like, oh, what's she doing in Utah? And it's like, she's visiting her boyfriend, like, she met him online, and
Right.
how hypocritical would it have been for me to be like, well, sorry, you can't have a boyfriend that you met online because everybody online is untrustworthy. And then also at the same time, to your point, some of the best friends that I have in my life, and many of the points of my career that have propelled me forward have been because of people that I've met through Twitter and online. So she called her shot there. She got it. She called her shot with me.
And more, right? We meet clients who that's how they met, was online. And it's probably just because it's too young and there's not enough data points. Just me being, relatively quant oriented. We don't have any clients divorcing or divorced who met online.
Yeah. That's pretty crazy
Now, it would be interesting to see over time if the divorce rate in the online, this is way off topic, in the online world is lower than in the old fashioned, you go to a high school football game or dumbstruck by somebody sitting across the stadium, you date for 8 years and get married, and then in the 10th year you divorce.
It's an interesting dynamic. And I'm thankful. Like at the end of the day, I'm just grateful. And grateful. I think also Twitter is one social media platform that I think we've all found each other on. LinkedIn's a little harder. It seems to have those deep connections with folks on, because it's meant to be a work platform. And then, Instagram is very much a photo, kind of a public photo album, if you will, is what it seems to be, photo and video album. And then Facebook.
My son likes to call certain people out there, they represent their Instagram life.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not their real life at all.
Yeah. So Twitter's been really meaningful in that way, because it kind of it's not really meant to be a photo sharing. It's not really meant to be put yourself out there in a way that you aren't already. I think the difficult side of Twitter gets to be with the anonymous folks and maybe the ads that are just annoying. But
100%. There should be no anonymous people out there, period. If you don't have enough guts to use your real name, I'm not even paying any attention to you.
Yeah. Yeah. So that kind of spurred out of that Twitter thread. We met, we talked about it. We reached out to a few people, you did, who said, absolutely, yes, would love to be a part of it.
And we have a much longer list of people who have expressed interest.
That are interested and willing. And after we got a few under our belt, a few conversations, we were like, we really need to make sure this gets out in the world in a well-organized way, so that it can reach as many folks as possible and become something that really encourages people in their career paths. But then we also wanted to build in our experience as financial planners. So there's a piece of the show that we'll be recording post interview as we mix it all together. And Pod Pony, we brought them on board. Why don't you talk about Pod Pony and Shift and kind of how we came about that?
So another interesting thing, I think you had some connection to Broderick beforehand, but Broderick made an offer at the Shift conference this past spring, I guess, to do recording sessions for people who are interested in doing podcasts. And so we did 2 sessions there, and then talked to Broderick some and was like, yeah, this would make some sense. We believe you could help us put together a really cool show. And then as we got to knowing Broderick a little bit better, we find out he's producing some other shows that we like a lot. And so
shout out Ashley Kwame. She's dropping hers this week. By the time this airs, it'll have been about a month ago. But some really great people.
And David Royney, I think is how you pronounce it, but I call him Phi Surgery because that's how I know him.
That's who he is on Twitter. That's right.
And I'll take a quick sidebar here to say anybody who thinks there's no luck in life is completely gonzo.
Yeah.
The random set of events that some luck, some engineered, put us here today to record this intro and get ready to tell the world that, hey, we're going to do this.
That's right.
And whether you like it or not, because I'm old and this is the way parents used to be, you're going to like this food I serve because I say so. And you better eat what's on your plate because there are starving children in Africa. But anyway, we're excited to put this out here and see. I mean, and everybody who's heard about it has said, "Hey, that's interesting. I'd love to hear it."
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's two directions you can go with podcasts. You can just press record and just let the conversation flow. I love that we get to do that in the original interview with the guest, but then also we're bringing a little bit of a stylized story
Right.
to it. So
There are lessons you can take from everyone's career, right?
yeah, yeah,
And some of them are financial, some of them are just behavioral and emotional. And how do you get through this situation? If that inspires one person to go become somebody they thought they could be, but they're not sure they could,
yep,
it is worth every ounce of effort we put into
that's
this.
right. Yeah, so we'll tell a little bit of a narrative, clip in and out of the story, or of the guest interview, and then at the end, one thing that we really felt passionate about was giving away some thoughtful, maybe dialogue about a financial planning topic related to their story. So already, we've talked with folks who are on sabbaticals. We've talked with folks who have really expressed their deep work with folks in their 20s and 30s, and just the different financial planning narrative and
Mm-hmm.
conversations that exist there versus in retirement. And so we're going to come in on the back end of telling the story with our guest and break down a financial planning topic as well, which I'm really excited to do, because it's just a little bit of a giveaway from us on the end that if you're listening, we want to leave you with some things to think about and consider, and maybe even a reason to pass it along to someone that who's in that stage of life and could use a little guidance. So nothing that we believe compliance is going to be concerned about, but just a few things that top of mind for us that we see based on the work that we've done with folks.
And my guess is, unintentionally, just as a result of the conversation, we will end up touching on a number of kind of the hot topics
That's right.
in financial planning, from why would you ever buy an expensive new car, to the whole mortgage versus the rent versus own conversation, to stock options, to cash flow management when you're young versus when you're old, to all those things that we have those conversations all day, every day. And
Yep.
from a certain perspective, I'm like, okay, I've had this conversation 100 times. That doesn't make it uninteresting. It just means I've had the conversation 100 times.
Yep.
And everybody's take is different.
Yep.
Literally everybody.
Yep. And I think the common theme from the show itself, and how did we get here, the story that our guest is sharing with us, and how they got to the point of life that they got to. I think everybody, when it comes to financial planning and financially related topics, gets to a moment in life where they're like, huh, how did we get here? How did I get here?
That's for sure.
What do I do next? And is it going to be okay? And so I hope to alleviate maybe some of those big question marks for folks as we talk.
Yeah, and some of them are actually, I personally find them fascinating. Maybe it's my point in life, but Christine Benz published something yesterday around, I'm not retiring yet, but I am kind of sort of doing certain things.
Yeah.
And I'm in a very similar stage of life, right? And I was like, it's interesting. I mean, it's, in this case, we have N equals 2, me and Christine. but I mean, what she's postulating as, probably valid research, I mean, I'm doing some very similar things.
Yeah.
And I know her because we've had this conversation. We come from completely different walks of life, completely different path to get where we are, yet we're doing the same things now.
Yeah.
And it's just, there's some, I would never call anything a universal truth, because I think everybody's truth is a little bit different. But there are some things that if you did them, you wouldn't be wrong. It might not be exactly right, but it wouldn't be wrong.
Wouldn't be wrong. Yeah.
If that helps a couple of people, I'm all for it.
We got here. How did we get?
We are here. Now we have to go there.
We'll figure out how we got here as we keep getting here, as we keep going.
I like that.
But yeah, we're really excited to be here. Thanks to everybody who's joining us, listening in. We hope you join us and continue to join us as we go places with our guests and share their stories of how they got to where they are. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, we'd love to chat with you about that as well. So if you have a big story and a lot of past lives and careers, please reach out to us. But thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the other side.